Hello world, and we are back. My name is Kyle Fischl. This could be the next episode of my poker vlog. Today I am playing at Sarasota, the One Eye Jacks Poker Club, but if you'd like to mix it up with me and you can't find a way to join me on the live table, I'm constantly battling on the virtual felt. Any interest in mixing up with me on that front, please message me on Instagram or Telegram. I'll get you set up for that. Otherwise, let's talk about some poker hands. On the first hand of note, I'm in the small blind with 5-3 of clubs. When an early position player makes it $15 and there's 2 calls, I'm going to stick it in there from the small blind with a suited gapper. We end up going 4 ways to a flop where we're instantly rewarded for our speculative pre-flop play with a 5-5 deuce 2 spade 1 heart board. I'm out of position to many players and a pre-flop aggressor, so hopefully someone has an overpair. I check. And it checks all the way to the cutoff who bets $20. As there's 2 players that could theoretically still put in money, we would love to just call here and let everyone continue with their entire range. But both middle players fold, so we're heads up to a turn card, which is the Jack of Hearts. It is a double flush draw board. I check to my opponent, and he continues for $50. This opponent particularly had been caught bluffing already, so I want to keep his bluffs in there. Don't want to raise here and let his absolute air that is drawing stone dead off the hook, so I just call, and the river is the deuce of diamonds. I kind of like this one, even though it's double paired and we don't see people bluff all that often. If my opponent had missed spades or missed hearts or 3-4, we blocked that one, but if he had any of these missed draws, he might feel the need to throw in a third barrel, get hands like ace high floats to fold. So I check to my opponent hoping he puts in a bet, but he just snap checks it back. He has pocket 9s. That makes sense to me. Definitely a check back spot. Certainly should have raised the turn versus that exact holding, but either way we're happy to get 2 barrels out of this particular hand. We get one more interesting hand where I'm in the hijack with queen 10 of clubs. I make it $15, the button and the big blind call. We end up going 3 ways to a flop, which is king 10 4 diamond spade diamond. I don't even get a chance to bet because the player to my right leads out for $20. I often think these small leads are just draws, try to name their own price. I would raise this if I had a stronger hand, really put the diamond draws in jail, but with just middle pair and we block the queen jack straight draw, I think we're just going to call here, try to keep the pot as small as possible. When I call, the button calls as well, so we're 3 ways to a turn card, which is the queen of diamonds. Definitely dicey, brings in the flopped flush draw, brings in jack 9, ace jack, king queen, a lot of stuff gets there, and we make 2 pairs, so certainly an action card. But the player to my right checks. Now I'm very happy to get this closer to showdown. We lose to a lot and beat some stuff. I check and the button checks it back. River is a complete brick, deuce of hearts, and now the player to my right bets $65. As the player to my right did not put any money in on the turn, I doubt he has a flush all that often. I think he could easily have like king jack, maybe queen jack open-ended that feels like it got shown on value on the turn, but then thinks it can value bet on the river. Maybe my opponent's just straight bluffing with the single ace of diamonds, but with 2 pair for just $65, I'm going to make the call. The button folds and my opponent has 10-6 of diamonds. So flopped middle pair plus flush draw. He's never folding to a raise here. And I guess I'm happy I kept the pot relatively small, although I think I could have just passed on the river bet versus certain opponents. Just decided to call this guy this one time. We win a smaller, less notable pot when we got to move to our optimal seat before we arrive at the next hand of note. I looked down at pocket queens. When the low jack makes it $20 and there's 2 callers, being on the button, I'm certainly 3-betting, I'm certainly sizing up. Would be completely fine, just take down all the money pre, would be fine to play a large pot in position, would fine to just get it all in pre. We're going to find out what happens as I make it $110. Think the sizing's okay. 120 is probably the most optimal, but on this one, the preflop aggressor goes in the tank for a long time. He looks visibly uncomfortable. Like, not in like a, I'm trying to act weak, but I'm gonna then announce all in with like 1 chip. No, he looks like he does not want to put the money in, which somewhat shocks me when he does raise to $420. I only have about 600 bucks in my stack. I am not calling this to just fold any flop for 120, and I'm certainly not folding as this opponent could easily just peg me for a button squeeze play and think I don't have that strong of a hand. So I get it all in, and my opponent agrees to run it 2 times with me after he calls because he's certainly not folding for 120 more either. And on the first board, queen high, I announce that's me. I've certainly locked up half the pot. If for some reason my opponent has pocket kings or pocket aces, we are certainly safe on the top board. But the run out goes club, club, and my opponent shows the king of clubs. And now I'm just in shambles. I'm like, I guess he has pocket kings with a club. He got a 4-liner on one board and we're dead on the other one. But the second board's ace high and he reveals his other card is an ace. Yep.
There's no way. There's no way.
That's not going to be good. That's quite bad for me. Ugh, that sucks. Losing a 50-50 on 2 runouts is not that very common. We should chop a lot of the time. But when I just flop a queen on the first board and still lose that one, that's like 85% going the other way, and that one really hurts. Honestly, felt like calling it after this. Sometimes you just get the feeling that it's not your day, no shot of getting even, and you're going to play bad forcing things to try to make it happen. So sometimes I would just take the L here, but then I realized I didn't really have enough for a video yet. Not a great justification for continuing playing, but now we're into the game for $1,800. And on the next interesting hand, versus the same opponent who opens to $20, this time it folds to me and I have pocket queens again. And this is like 5 minutes after I got stacked by this guy. So close together that PTSD is certainly in my mind here. I kind of don't even want to play this hand. It just feels bad, but we don't come to a poker table to play emotionally. We're just going to play our strategy and trust that it's the right one. I 3-bet it to $100, and on this one, it does not take too long for my opponent to fold, so I mean, that's good. Queens are 1-1 on the day. On the next hand of note, you can look at this still frame, as I did not catch this one on film, but it is too interesting not to go over. I'm on the button, I button straddle to $5, and with 5 limps to me, I look down at ace of hearts, 3 of spades, and decide to raise this one up to $40. Yes, this is a relatively obvious squeeze play, but if our opponents aren't even going to raise themselves, are they really going to call 8x out of position versus someone who has a large chip stack and might be tilting? Well, it turns out they are, because the small blind and the big blind decide to call, so we end up going 3 ways to a quite bloated pot with not that good of a hand, and the flop is ace of spades, queen of spades, 9 of diamonds. Well, okay, we have top pair, we have no kicker whatsoever, and our opponents are limp callers. When they both check to me, I decide to continue for $65, and the small blind is the only caller, big blind folds, and in my mind, he only had like $350 behind, and I said I was going to jam on any card 5 or lower. Just go with it. If he has a better ace, then he just wins, but we certainly need to protect our hand against the variety of flush draws and straight draws that are available, and certainly within a limp caller's range. Well, the turn is the queen of hearts, and my opponent snap rips for $350. And when I tell you snap rips, I'm saying the card had not hit the table yet and the opponent announced all in. So then when I see that it's the queen, I realize that's kind of a bad card for me. Certainly not the one I would have chosen, but then I have to think about this live read of snap ripping. The main thought going through my head is if my opponent had king queen, he would at least think for half a second, maybe a whole 5 seconds, about how he's going to get most of the money in when he thinks he has the best hand. Like, if you had king queen here and you think your opponent has an ace, you're going to be like, do I check raise? Do I lead small? Can I check, bet river? Like, there has to be some level of cognitive processing about how you're going to get as much money in as you possibly can when you think you have the best hand. To just snap rip is like, my decision was made up on the flop and the turn card was irrelevant. And the hands that I think do that are like Jack 10, maybe King Jack, maybe 2 spades. Additionally, because my opponent's a limp caller and the ace and the queen of spades are the ones that are on the board, he can't just have like ace 10 of spades or queen 8 of spades. There's no flopped pair plus flush draw that beats me based on this board. Having the 3 blocker makes me think my opponent has a flush draw a lot of the time. So I tank for a while and then just decide that I'm ahead of his draws more often than not. And that's likely the hand that he has. So I decide to put the money in. Today's going to be a day where I go absolutely in the buried category or we dig ourselves out.
Because that's what heroes do.
And we agreed to run it twice as I'm always a 2x guy. First one is the Jack of Spades, and I say, well, I guess that's you. Second one is the 4 of Hearts, so hopefully we get half the pot. And my opponent shows pocket kings with no spade. So, not the way I would have played it as a limp caller from the small blind, even though there's a button straddle. And not a hand I ever considered when I was doing my analysis. But I drag in a huge pot, and my opponent lets me know for some time how much of a bad call my call was and how I should have folded. And he couldn't understand how I came to a call on that one, but this brings us to the next fun hand of poker, where I'm on the big blind with ace-jack offsuit, With one limp, the +1 player makes it $20. There are 3 players that decide to call, and I squeeze with pocket queens, so we're certainly going to raise it up with ace-jack offsuit as well. A little bit of balance. I make it $140. And I'm absolutely shocked to see the preflop aggressor call the 140, another middle position player call the 140, and then the small blind goes all in for approximately $400. Now, when the preflop aggressor doesn't 4-bet, I don't think he ever has like aces as a trap or kings or anything good. Same with the middle position player. Both these players are really capped at really weak ranges, and the small blind who called jams, he likely has like 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s. I see hands like that play exactly this way all the time, so thinking I get to basically free roll a 50-50 when I put all the money in here, thinking that the other 2 players are going to certainly fold, and we're just going to be a lot of dead money that I get to run 2 boards with this guy. I ship it all in. I should have the best hand here almost always against the other 2 players. I expect to get snap folds with some lamenting words like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen or something, but after the first guy snap folds, the second guy snap calls.
Well, I wish I hadn't done that.
You know, good enough for 20, good enough for 140, good enough for 1500, I guess. Because we are infinitely deep, and he did not raise himself at any point in this hand. And then he just has ace-queen offsuit. So I am so dead that I can't even believe it. I don't even know how the money got in so passively and then all at once. But we do agree to run 2 boards, so maybe I can get half the money back. First flop is ace-10 high. I mean, it looks good for me, but it's really not. Turn jack. Oh, thank you. Oh, I sucked out so hard. Don't even care what the small blind has for $400. I just don't want to get stacked for $1,500. River's clean on that board, so we're at least getting half of the massive side pot of like over 3,000. Second flop is queen 10 at 9. We flop open-ended. Dealer, can you give me a king one time?
Do you believe in miracles?
Can I scoop this? I mean, queen's lost to ace-king on 2 boards. Why is it my turn to run 2 boards and just win? Brick turn and a brick river. So we do not get the bailout of the whole thing. And the small blind just mucks his hand. So based on the 140 from the other player and 400 from this guy, we're actually both profiting about $270. So this was a decent result for me, and I am extremely happy to turn a jack on the first one. We continue with a rare double board PLO bomb pot. I have 10-8-8 deuce with clubs and spades, and the top board comes 8-6-3 with 2 diamonds. Bottom board comes ace, queen, 9 with 2 hearts. So we have the nuts on top and a gutter to a kind of a bad straight on bottom, as we wouldn't even have a very strong hand at all. Either way, early position raises to $50. 2 different players call. I'm on the button with the nuts. I don't think raising accomplishes a whole lot because someone has the other board pretty strong, and any of these players can have just draws that are not really folding. So I choose just call this one, and the small blind calls as well. We end up going 5 ways to turn cards. Top board is 6 of hearts. Bottom board is 5 of spades. We actually make second nuts on top, and we have a strong flush draw on bottom. I expect my backdoor to be live almost always. And on this turn card, it doesn't slow down the action. The flop aggressor bets $50 a second time, and there's 2 more callers. And at this point, if someone just has pocket 6s, it's my time to die. We have to raise this one up. We have the second nuts. We want to build a pot here since we're kind of only playing for half of it right now. I make it $250. I think this sizing can keep a lot of players in, and we can jam on safe turn on top, or if we hit a spade on bottom. For $250, the player to my left in the small blind had the 50 like he was going to call, but after the raise, he decides to fold. And 2 of the players that called at $250. So this pot is growing substantially very quickly. I now realize any card on top 9 or higher also downgrades my hand from better full houses that get there. But thankfully for me, it is the 4 of spades. The other river is the 3 of clubs. Oh, I wish they were reversed. That would have been sick. Would have made my spade flush draw and kept my full house. But can't complain. When both players check to me kind of slowly, they certainly do not want to put all the money in. So that's what we're going to make them do. If you want to see my cards, you have to put all the money in. I mean, the bottom board, which we have basically nothing, kind of drew out where all the draws missed anyway. So I'm expecting to win this a high percentage of the time, and then sometimes just get snapped off by pocket 6s, and hopefully a pair of 8s beats 6s and nothing on bottom. But That shouldn't happen that often. As the first player is thinking with about a $900 stack, the second player is showing his hand to his opponents, usually a sign that he's folding. A weight off my shoulders, as I know I'm past one player already to scoop the whole pot, but the player whose first act is still thinking about it, and he eventually puts it in with ace 5 6, and that's all he had. So he didn't even have a full house on the sixes board, and he just called with aces and fives on the other one. He could easily be scooped here, and I honestly think that if there was a little more pressure of there's an opponent behind that might have it and might call you off too, you're closer to folding now that I think about it. But regardless, we'll take half the pot. We grew it nicely, 5 ways on 2 streets. On the next very fun hand of poker, I have ace 10 offsuit. With 1 limp, I make it $20. The button decides to call. The big blind raises to $75. And then the player who limped, he now 4-bets to $280. I'm certainly out of there, but I decided to keep the filming going because the hand turned very interesting. The button calls the 280 because call 20, call 280, obviously. And the button calls the 280. So you don't see too many 3-way 4-bet pots. So let's see what their ranges are. The flop is 8-7-7 rainbow, and the pre-flop 4-better decides to continue for $350. Seems pretty standard. He likely has an overpair. This board's pretty safe for overpairs. And the button decides to call the $350. Turn is a 6, so now the board's a little bit dicey, but if you were the pre-flop 4-better and you had an overpair, you shouldn't really be concerned about this board unless your opponent has pocket 8s exactly. 6s should not have continued, pocket 7s is quads, and suited connectors are probably unlikely to call a 4-bet, so we want to narrow our opponent's range to just pocket pairs and basically the strongest ace-x. Either way, button only has $110 left, and the pre-flop 4-better goes all in. Button's not folding for $110. He says he has a lot of outs after the pre-flop aggressor shows pocket aces. And on the first one, 10 of hearts makes a flush draw. He says, that's me. I guess he had hearts. Second river, a 5 of diamonds. He says, that's me. I don't even understand how. And he shows pocket 9s to crack pocket aces. And that is kind of a gross run out, so I guess it happens to us all sometimes. But on a final hand of note, with a button straddled to $5, the big blind decides to limp. I'm under the gun with pocket jacks. I raised it up to $20. And on this one, the button and the big blind decide to call, so we end up going 3 ways to a flop, which is 6-4-4 with 2 spades. When the big blind checks to me, I decide to lead out here for $25. Usually I would check full range monk in the middle, but I think jacks are just a little bit too vulnerable to let a free card peel off, as I expect the button to miss a lot, and I expect a lot of flush draws and straight draws to be out there, so we want to get value and protect our hand right now. On this one, the button folds, but the big blind decides to call. So we are heads up to a turn card. Dealer, can I not have a spade? 1, oh, it's the 10 of spades. We do have the jack of spades to fall back on if needed, but the obvious flush draw has come in. GTO would recommend bet 40% pot here, but when my opponent checks to me, I just think he has a draw here a lot of the time, and I don't really want to give him the chance to check raise, as it would kind of blow me off my hand, and my hand still has a ton of equity and playability, so I decided to check this one back with a dicey turn card. And the river is a bink 4 of diamonds. We hit a full house in a very bizarre manner, and our opponent leads out for $65. Kind of a large bet. I say that because when facing this, I forgot the button put money in pre-flop. I thought the pot was closer to 80 or 90 instead of 110, so I thought this was closer to a 75% pot bet instead of a half pot size bet. Either way, with our overpair and full house, I think we have to raise here. I think single 10s will call a raise, single 6s, spades, maybe not. It's an obvious 3 of a kind on board, and that, beats a flush. I'm also somewhat nervous because he's a limp caller, so he could just have a 4 in range pretty much pure here. Not that it's easy to make quads, but he could just have it. Either way, I did not come here to just call this bet. I make it $200. Very much like that I'm going for value here. My opponent 3-bet river. He made it $465. And now I'm in shambles. Now I'm just hating myself, wishing I would have just called. How does this guy not have a 4 here? When's the last time you've ever seen a 3-bet river min click without the absolute nuts at low stakes poker? I do think this opponent could easily have a 4 now, especially 3-betting the river. but I had seen this opponent in the past do value bets that I thought were a little bit light. Like, it was certainly for value, just the hand strength I thought was a little bit not as strong as it should have been. Sometimes it worked, sometimes he value owned himself, so I'm hoping he's just doing that with a 10 here, because I just say I have an overpair and just kind of side call. He says, you have an overpair? I say yes, and he mucks. Let me know in the comment section if you're screaming at your TV saying that this has to be a jam. We have to just get all the money in on this one. And if we won't run into a random 4 or pocket 6s, then so be it. But I thought even calling here was a little bit close. But luckily, because of this hand, we have dug our way all the way out of the hole. We are profiting $420 today after getting stacked super early in the session across 6 hours, equating to $70 an hour or 23 big blinds an hour. Today was quite a roller coaster of a day. Queens lose to Ace King twice when they're the slight favorite. That's quite irritating. But then we get bailed out on Ace Jack versus Ace Queen. Super thankful to get that one. I guess I should just run it once from now on. I could have scooped like a 4K pot. Would have been one of the biggest wins of the year if that one held on 2 runouts. Because even on the second one, getting open-ended, it just can't come through for me. And then I'd say I did pretty well with a few hero calls. Just a pair of aces hero call, as well as, you know, a 3-bet river. I mean, yes, we have a full house, but I mean, how is that not super, super nutted? Either way, good win, pretty phenomenal. Happy to dig myself out of a big hole. Thank you for watching all at this point. I will see you on the next one.